Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And as I mentioned in the last video, we're going to be beginning a new series where we're going to be slowly working together through the Starlight Archives. And so we're going to be beginning with Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings, first book of the Starlight Archive. And we're only going to get through today the Prelude and the Prologue. And again, this is very much Brandon Sanderson-esque to have both a prelude and a prologue, because we know anything about Brandon Sanderson, it is going to be that, boy, he is going to have a lot of work put into it, and it is going to be well worth it. The maps are just absolutely incredible that he has sprinkled throughout, not to mention the maps on the covers and all the other artwork. So just an amazing job. It's interesting to hear the story of how he got the cover art done and the artist who did it. It was actually the artist who did the book that he remembers being the first book that got him inspired into reading. He was in middle school, I believe, if I'm remembering this interview correctly, and really was struggling to get excited about it. And his teacher gave him a book that she enjoyed. And man, he loved it, and the cover art of that book was something that he always remembered. And so when he came time to write the Starlight Archives, he reached out to the same artist and asked if he would be able to do the art. He had been retired and said that he would love to. So this is his artwork, and he has the artwork for all of the books in the Starlight Archive. So really just kind of a cool little nuance there. But we begin with the prologue, and this is 4,500 years ago from time of the story. I'm not going to read it page by page. However, I am going to make a few comments, some notes that I've written down. The story opens at the end of another desolation. And this has been an absolutely massive battle. And the 10 heralds, as we're going to become to find out who these people are, they've continued their endless cycle of fighting and either dying in battle or willingly going back to the place of torment to hold on as long as they possibly can before releasing and beginning another desolation. What a horrible situation that these 10 heralds are in. They suffer in this place of torment, anguish, and when they finally break, they can't take it anymore, they return and another desolation begins. We don't really know much about what this desolation is, other than it's a huge cataclysmic war. And so Kalak, he is who we first find, our first viewpoint here. He returned to the place where they had agreed to meet, and Jezreel, the leader and the king of the heralds, is waiting for him. He notices that the other 8 heralds are not there, but he sees swords that are stuck into the stone. And he begins counting them up, and including him and Jezreel, there are only 7 swords. So that would be 9 out of 10 heralds. He asks Jezreel about it and finds out that Talanel, or Taln, as they're going to call him, they all have nicknames, which just shows how long these heralds have been doing this, didn't make it through the battle. And he has returned to the place of torment already. And the other 8 heralds have decided to end what they call the Oath Pack. And they're going to leave. They're going to walk away from their responsibility as heralds, and they're going to escape into the solace of individual hiding. They can't go back to the torment again. We read that several times. They just can't. And Kalak was there in his mindset as he's walking back to this place of meeting. He is actually verbalizing for the first time. We come to find out that they don't know how long they've been doing this. They're all running together. These, is it centuries? Is it millennia? They just don't know. They've been doing this for so long. And we read words in the prelude, words like anguish, grief, cowardice, brokenness. And these are all emotions that Kalak, Jezrien, and the others are feeling. I wanted to read for you a quote that Kalak asks. He says, "What do we tell the people, Jezrien? What will they say of this day?" Again, the day that the 9 of the 10 heralds walked away from their oath. "It's simple," Jezrien said, walking away. "We tell them that they finally won." And so that's what the 9 of the 10 heralds have decided. Kalak asks Jezrien, is it even possible? Can one herald even fulfill the oath pact? And he says that one of the other heralds believes that he can. And so they planned to, in that moment, Jezrien and Kalak leave their swords stuck into the stone in a ring of swords with a single open spot, the place where the 10th sword should have gone. We conclude the prelude with these last few sentences. "The one of them who was lost, the one they had abandoned, forgive us," Kalak thought, then left. So we sort of find this opening scene, the end of a massive battle, where we don't know much about these heralds. We don't know anything really about them other than the fact that they had made an oath that they would fulfill this cycle of fighting, defeating these enemies, and then going back to suffer again as long as they could hold out. Other than that, we don't really know anything. We just know that they have broken. These 9 have broken. The one who went back, Talanel, he did not. He went back in good faith because he died, and that's what happened. You either died and went back to torment, or you survived the desolation and willingly went back. And so Kalak, Jezrien, the others who we have not met yet, they have abandoned their oaths. And he says, "Forgive us," as he walked away. That's the prologue. Well, forgive me, that's the prelude. As we flip on to the next page, we come to Book 1, The Way of Kings, 4,500 years later. My goodness, what a time jump. 4,100 years later. And the prologue is going to bring us into the midst of a celebration. It is a massive party. And I wanted to read for you the first sentence of what we're going to call the book proper, right? And it's just, it may not mean much to those who have not read the stories, who have not grown to love these characters, to really rise and fall with this story. But the first sentence reads, "Zeth, son Villano, truthless of Shinovar, wore white on the day he was to kill a king." And we meet this character Zeth. He's dressed up in what we're going to find is a traditional Parshendi outfit. It's white, and he has worn their clothing, though he is not a Parshendi. He's worn their clothing to a peace treaty that has just been signed between the Alethi and the Parshendi. Zeth believes that he's been contracted by the Parshendi to assassinate the Alethi king, King Gavilar. So as he's working through the celebration, he's stepping over drunken people. One of them that he steps over is King Gavilar's brother, Dalinar Kholin. Gavilar Kholin is the king. His brother Dalinar is in a drunken stupor on the ground. Well, as Zeth quietly invades the inner castle, he absorbs Stormlight. And again, this is called the Starlight Archives. He begins absorbing Stormlight from lights that are hung on the wall. This Stormlight has been infused into gems, and that's how they use the Stormlight one way to light up rooms. And we're going to find more about that later. But Zeth is able to absorb it by breathing in, and it's going to empower him. He quietly invades the inner castle, and he demonstrates incredible skill that is powered by the Stormlight, using 3 lashes that we're going to be introduced to. The first one is called the basic lashing. This changes his gravitational pull. So if he lashes himself to the wall, that becomes the floor. So he can stand up on the wall. The basic lashing changes gravity from his perspective. The second one is called a full lashing. This allows him to bind objects together. Essentially, they have a gravitational pull towards each other, right? They're binded together. And then third, there's the reverse lashing, where actually he can give an object a gravitational pull that pulls things towards it. So those 3 are empowered by his use of Stormlight. We read that while he uses it, it quickly is escaping his body. It's actually oozing out in sort of a misty form from his skin. When he breathes, it's escaping from his mouth. And he is cutting his way through the Alethi defenses using Stormlight and using his magnificent Stormlight infused blade. It's called a shard blade. And we're going to learn about the shards and how the blades and also the shard plates, their armor, are infused with Stormlight and actually give the user what we can call superhuman strength, superhuman ability, and are extremely formidable. Well, he's cutting his way through the Alethi defenses. They're vastly outmatched. And he's worked his way all the way to the king's private room. When he crashes through the wall, he's confronted and he sees some guards rushing the king out a side door, and in their place is left a shard bearer. So again, one of the Alethi warriors who is inside this shard plate with a massive shard blade. It's about 6 feet long, if I'm remembering and reading correctly. Well, this incredible fight ensues. Szeth, who's not in shard plate, but can use the lashes, he's lashing himself all around the room, dodging the massive blade that's being swung by the shard bearer. And they have an incredible fight. Szeth is able to get the upper hand and uses his lashings as well as the reverse lashing to really move and begin to break the shard plate. It can only take so much before it begins to lose its power. It needs to be recharged with actually gems inside the shard plate. And he's able to escape and rush after the king. He begins racing as fast as he can toward the king so he can't escape, but stops when he realizes that the shard bearer is not following him, which strikes him as odd because he knows he didn't completely disable the shard bearer. And he has a thought, where is the safest place to leave the king other than inside shard plates with a shard blade? He turns back and continues his fight with the newly recognized King Gavilar. The battle rages on and out into the balcony, where it seems like Gavilar is going to actually win here. He is clearly stronger and more of a menacing force. He's a very skilled swordsman, Szeth remembers. But Szeth uses his lashing and lashes down on the balcony, eventually crashing it down, toppling the king over the side of the castle. He crashes onto the ground while Szeth lashed himself to the wall of the castle. This is not enough to kill the king with shard blade, but the shard plate was so damaged that while he crashes down, he actually falls into splintered wood that breaks through the shard plate, and he's bleeding out. And so before Gavilar dies, Szeth walks down to him and they have a few moments of conversation. And he makes a few last requests to his assassin. First, I'll read what is recorded. He pulled out a small crystalline sphere tied to a chain. He says, "You must take this. They must not get it." And then secondly, he says, tell my brother, he must find the most important words a man can say. And so with that, he dies. He gives him this crystalline sphere, says they must not get it, and tell my brother, this is Dalinar, who Szeth stepped over on his way to kill Gavilar, drunken and in a stupor. Tell my brother he must find the most important words a man can say. Well, we finish the prologue by reading something that's very interesting, and it's a line here, and I'll just read it out of the book. To Szeth's people, a dying request was sacred. He took the king's hand, dipping it in the man's own blood, then used it to scrawl on the wood what he asked him. Brother, you must find the most important words a man can say. With that, Szeth escaped into the night. He left the king's shard plate. He had no use for it. The blade Szeth already carried was curse enough. So that's where we're going to end the prologue. The king has been murdered. His brother was unable to be part of it as he was drunk. The Parshendi are going to be blamed because Szeth was dressed as a Parshendi. One of the instructions when he was trying to assassinate him was that he had to be seen as much as possible. And so he fulfilled that. He was seen by almost the entire castle, it feels like. And this is where we end. So kind of two cliffhangers in the prelude and the prologue. And what a way to start this story. Again, I understand that in these epic fantasies, there's two ways to go about it, right? You can give a bunch of exposition in the first couple chapters, explaining to the reader everything that we need to know about the world, right? And the characters, the magic system, if that's going to be part of it. Brandon Sanderson doesn't do that. He really drops you right into the midst. And as far as the writing style goes, that hook is incredible, right? We find this first prelude of these 9 heralds who can't suffer anymore. They can't keep doing it. And they abandon the last herald to go back to torment because they're just broken. And then we jump into the prologue where this is 4,500 years later. The king is assassinated by this warrior who has a shard blade and can use stormlight to aid in his fighting. And we don't really know anything about it. Such an interesting way to start it. And I remember when I read it for the first time, I struggled with the prelude. I didn't know what we were doing. There were big words, there were names. Once I got into the prologue, man, I was hooked. So have you read these two? What do you think about the way that Brandon Sanderson started the book? And do you empathize with the heralds? That idea of just being broken. Of course, they admit that they're being cowardice, right? But when you get to that point of actual anguish, and maybe you've even been there in your life, obviously, this is a fantasy story, but maybe you've been there where you have just struggled so long and you can begin to justify a lot of ideas. Sanderson does such a good job of talking about real themes, emotional, mental, physical, and we're going to see this throughout. But there's the prelude and the prologue for The Way of Kings, and we'll look forward to continuing on the discussion from here. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you'll like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about these initial 2 chapters, and what was your experience when you first started to read them? Let me know, and we'll catch you on the next video.